Hi,
Hi.
welcome to the Go to Win podcast with your hosts, Sophia Garcia and Taskin and Sophia. Tune in as we interview those affected by childhood cancer, gather perspectives, and how others find comfort in their expertise.
Today we'll be discussing the history of cancer. So, why did you want to discuss the history of cancer?
I feel like it's important to talk about, especially since recently we've been doing more, like we've been teaching more in our recent podcast, I guess. And also just because we are a podcast that centers around cancer and childhood cancer specifically, I think it's important that we talk about the history and just how advanced treatments have become, how much more progress we still have to like go after now, and just I guess just the origins of cancer.
I wanted to discuss the history of cancer because I think it was pretty cool to see how much we've advanced throughout the centuries and the similarities and differences between ancient civilizations and their methods of fighting cancer compared to the ways that we fight cancer. So, what did you find interesting in your research?
I guess one thing I found interesting was just how little progress, I guess, had been made before. One thing I found was just that scientists have learned more about cancer in the last 2 decades than in all the centuries previously. And that was just really surprising to me because although like I knew, of course, that like in today's age, with all the technology we have, there would be a lot more advancements. I guess I just thought that because there had been so many centuries before where cancer was something that was like known about and people knew what cancer was, I thought that like there would have been, I guess, more advancements. But yeah, what about you?
I think I found that interesting as well. I think that was the most interesting. I couldn't find enough information that details like the advancements between like the centuries, but I feel like we've had a lot more advancements in the past maybe decade, and I feel like one of the things that like supports that is this idea of like access file, which actually persisted until the 16th century, and it was believed that there was 4 body fluids and they were all linked to different organs and different earthly elements and specific seasons. And if there's an imbalance of a certain type of body fluid, specifically black bile in this case, it would lead to certain diseases, in this case, cancer. And that actually persists until the 16th century, which is kind of surprising because you wouldn't think that something from such a long time ago, like from ancient previous the civilization would actually persist until like the 16th century.
Yeah, I think it's also just really cool to think about like religion's role and just like other I guess cultures, like their roles in how people view certain things. I think we've talked about in the past just how like someone's religion or beliefs could have an effect on how they view cancer, but like kind of maybe just how they like perceive like what cancer is. Like I didn't think about how that could play a role also. Um, yeah, and then I guess just going on to like what I found a lot about the different treatments. And one thing I found was just about surgery. So like with surgery, that was considered, I think, like one of the first methods because people thought if the cancer is affecting one part of your body, then just remove it and it will just go away. But eventually, one thing I found interesting was just that ancient physicians like knew pretty early on that cancer would usually come back even after like a tumor was surgically removed. And they realized that like it could spread throughout the body so that they like because they didn't surgically remove the tumor earlier on, it would have spread throughout the body and then as a result like it wouldn't go away.
Going back to the idea of how religion played a role in this entire thing, one thing I found was in ancient Egypt, they believed that cancer was something like the gods caused people to have cancer. And I think I found that interesting. But I haven't done enough research on seeing how exactly that belief affected people in ancient Egypt. Um, and also the idea of surgery, I guess, which you kind of mentioned. People back then did understand that surgery was probably the best way. And but one thing that I found interesting was that in 1728, it was suggested that surgery should be done when the tumor has not gone into nearby tissues or wasn't movable. And I guess that's kind of like an advancement because even if cancer has spread to other cells, like other parts of the body, surgery is still done. So I think that's kind of like a difference that we have right now. And another interesting thing was they used a tool called a fire drill to destroy the tissue. But it was also like it was from this book from ancient Egypt that also detailed that there's actually no treatment for this.
Yeah, I also talked a lot how like a lot of people back then thought that cancer was incurable because some like ancient physicians thought that once the cancer had spread, there like surgery couldn't be done, so then it was basically incurable. And they even believed that intervention could have been more harmful, which I think that part, just that intervention could be more harmful if the cancer's progressed a lot, is something that's even considered today. I think with a lot of stage 4 cancers today, some people are given the choice, like, or I guess people are always given the choice whether to seek treatment or not. But especially with like far progressed cancers like stage 4 cancer, a lot of people will choose, especially if they're like older, to not get any intervention. So I guess it's interesting that that's like just stick with people for so long. And then also something that like relates to that with like the idea of cancer being considered incurable. I also hadn't realized that belief has been that belief has existed for a very long time, and it's like kind of contributed to the fear that people have of cancer, and that's kind of why a lot of people consider, even today, they consider cancer as incurable, and that's why they put off a doctor, and that can like result in like a worse cancer diagnosis eventually because they just keep putting it off, and then um, the cancer will progress. So I feel like it's interesting that the fear has existed for that long, and also just like the thought that some intervention could be more harmful than no intervention.
I agree with you. I think the idea that cancer can't be treatable or there's no treatment for it has existed for a long time, and it still seems to persist in our society until this day. But also that fear has created the first known article on cancer warning signs in 1913, and it also formed a nationwide organization dedicated to public education on cancer. So despite that fear causing a lot of misconceptions that there are no treatments because of cancer, it also kind of made people think of other ways to fight that misconception, like creating organizations that talk about cancer, just like our podcast is created to like combat those misconceptions.
Yeah, I think that's also just a thing that's existed for so long because we get, I guess it's changed kind of because we now get our information mostly from social media, which can have its like good and bad sides, I guess. So I guess it's just cool how like information and the spread of information has changed over time, but also it's been very similar because we see like I guess that first article that you mentioned about like the warning signs of cancer in 1913, like we see that today, but it's just like different. Like I feel like we can study anything throughout history, just like seeing how I guess cancer education has changed throughout time. Like we see it all over social media now, but in the past it was like in different articles. And less, I think there's more education now than there was like in the past. But yeah.
Um, I found some interesting ideas that there were pastes created with poisonous chemicals to kill weed and pests that were used to cure cancer. Um, and also another thing was to sit on something that was burning, or to break up a stone in water and leave it overnight. And I feel like a lot of these are kind of interesting compared to the treatments that we have now, especially like the advancements we have, like chemotherapy, um, and I recommend all the treatments that we have right now.
Yeah, I didn't find anything like that. I'm actually I feel like that's like very surprising, but I guess it's like ancient times. Like, yeah. I don't know. I found more things during like the 19th century, so like 1800s. Like for one thing, for radiation therapy, like I found something about a German physics professor that in 1896 just like kind of presented this lecture about x-rays, because and he used x for like an unknown quantity. So like and after that like x-rays were used for diagnosis. So I guess that's interesting because I didn't realize like how early on um x-rays were like kind of considered for diagnosis. Like I thought I don't know, like how did you think that diagnosis was done like before then?
Specifically, like, what time period? Like, the time period
Like,
that you're
I
talking.
guess because I didn't think like I guess like I thought that like diagnosis would have started in like the 1900s at least. Like it started in the or I guess it's like very late 1800s, but like I just thought like diagnosis like I didn't really think about how it would have been before, but I thought it would have been a lot less advanced.
I think it would have been a lot less advanced, specifically maybe like the 1800s, like during that time period. But I've also come to realize that they had a lot of like techniques to figure it out. Like microscopes in the 19th century helped see tissue from cancer, which is also kind of interesting. That they had microscopes and they were able to view how cancer looked like, and also like the advancement of like surgery. There was like a time period when it was like surgery was really popular and surgery was being done because such advancements to like anesthesia sort of to help with complications such as like blood loss kind of also like greatly contributes to the fact that we also use surgery to fight cancer.
Yeah, and just in terms of like advancements from like past times, I also found like things like one discovery from like I think it was a physician in don't know actually I don't know where but he studied bunnies actually just to find out more about cancer. So he decided to test like the removal of ovaries in bunnies just to see if it would affect other organs because they were looking for like treatments for cancers. And after studying bunnies like he found that one organ held control over other separate organs. And that led to the development of oophorectomy. I just because I don't know if I said that right. But it's basically just a treatment that's used to improve like I guess conditions for breast cancer patients. And I thought that was like really interesting, just how like because I didn't know how they thought of that. I don't know, like just studying bunnies just to see like how organs would affect each other, and that just kind of just contributed to how like I guess cancer treatment has advanced today because we kind of just see how like they realized that surgery alone wouldn't work because just taking out one like area that has a tumor wouldn't just like solve or like cure the cancer like entirely because it would affect other organs as well. So yeah, that was just something that I found surprising.
That's actually really interesting. I wouldn't have thought like people would actually like examine bunnies to like figure out cancer in humans. Do you know what time period that happened in?
Oh yeah, 19th century, so I think like 1800s.
Okay, that's kind of surprising. Like they took like bunnies and they were able to like do a whole process on that. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And also one idea that I found interesting was that like in Rome, they used to think that various remedies can be successful, but specifically in early stage diagnosis. And that's why they stress the importance of early stage diagnosis, which I kind of think is something that's also important now. We kind of want people to realize the warning signs of cancer and how it looks like to be able to like get an early diagnosis and get like a better treatment. And I feel like that's like a good idea that has persisted throughout the centuries.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like also just like with what I found before, like just kind of how there's been fears of like cancer being incurable. Like I think that's also just contributed to people not seeking treatment early on, like not even just today, because we see that today in a lot of cases, but also just like in the past, like and people would just go and just not even think about like the fact that they had cancer, not seek out treatment, and as a result, it would progress further. And that's how like we had the different stages, like we talked about last time. So I think it's just like interesting, like although we've made so many advancements over time, there's really a lot, I guess, in like social norms that hasn't changed. Like we see like which is media spread like about education about cancer, like that stayed like basically the same. It's just different kind of forms. And then also just like the fears, I guess. Like I thought it'd be a little different just because we have so much more knowledge and research on cancer today that I didn't think that people would kind of avoid cancer, but I think it just depends, like not avoid cancer treatment. So I think it just depends. Like there's different things that'll change over time, but not that many things will change also.
Yeah, I agree with that idea that like um I guess one thing you mentioned was like how surgery was pretty like it was kind of recommended if you get cancer back then, and I feel like it still kind of is like one treatment that you can possibly get. So like it kind of we could see like a lot of the past still reflected in the present. And also, one thing that I found interesting that in 1937, the U.S. Congress made it a goal to pass the National Cancer Institute Act, and I feel like that's kind of interesting because the entire government actually got into this, and they realized the importance of spreading awareness about cancer to the point where they created like the National Cancer Institute Act.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about that. Like, do you know exactly what the act says or what it did?
So according to my research, it says that it allowed to conduct own research and to promote research in other institutions and coordinate cancer-related projects and activities. I guess it was kind of like a foundation or like a starting ground for like cancer research, specifically within the 20th century.
Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like that's also just because research is so important to like the different advancements that we have. Like, just something like I found at research is just that it's like it was needed with hormone therapy to research how like hormones influence cancer growth, and that alone, like that research alone, guided progress in developing new drugs for cancer treatment, and it helped research look at new ways to use drugs to reduce like the risk of even developing cancers. So I think that's really cool. Also, like, did you find anything about like I guess different ways that people got cancer in the past?
Um, I didn't find that.
It's okay. I could talk. Maybe just say like, did you find anything or something? Because then I could say what I found.
Oh, okay, okay. Can I like
Yeah,
restart?
yeah,
Say,
yeah, yeah.
no, I didn't actually find anything about it. Did you find anything about it?
Yeah, I actually found like during World War One, there were naval personnel who were exposed to mustard gas during military action, and that was found to have created toxic changes in the bone marrow cells, and that would develop into um like all of those, I guess whatever they were exposed to from the mustard gas was like developed into their blood cells or like established in their blood cells. Um, and yeah, I think that also led to like different types of cancers. So I think that's like interesting just to see like throughout time, like what different things have caused cancer. So yeah.
I kind of found um the fact that so back then there wasn't as much as of the risky factors that we have now. And that kind of contributed to like the lack of study that they had back then for cancer. And I guess that's kind of an interesting insight that you provided that like during World War I, was it? Uh,
World War II, but yeah.
Oh, World War II. Okay. During World War II, they were exposed to this, and that's why a lot of them did had they were like developing cancer. And I think I found that interesting because from my research, I found that a lot of the risky activities that is present now were not present back then, and therefore there was not enough research to actually like talk about cancer and just like how some of these risky activities actually like lead to like a higher risk of developing cancer. And I think I also found something interesting was that like in the future they're planning on like using robot arms and other devices that are controlled by surgeons. And this would help with like cancer surgery and just like all of the other like techniques on battling cancer. I think I found that interesting because like eventually we'll be the past basically, and people will look back at us and like what we did for cancer. I think that's kind of interesting that like from now we're kind of developing ways and we can like better tackle cancer in the future.
Yeah, I also found that like I was really surprised when I saw it. Like I almost thought like it wasn't real because like just to think about like robots like doing surgery. I feel like it's definitely really cool though. Just like what you said, just to see how far like we have come, but also just how much progress we have like yet to make. Yeah, I feel like that's like really cool just to see like how much it's advanced. But yeah, was there anything else that like you found like I guess surprising in your research?
I guess the idea of cancer being present in animals too. I guess we don't really talk about that. Usually, it's just humans and stuff. I think you also found that idea like we found cancer in fossils, like dinosaur fossils. So this has been going on for a long, long time, and not just in humans. It also has happened in like animals too. And I guess like the evidence of cancer in bones and mummies in ancient Egypt was is also kind of surprising. Like these actual like mummies from ancient Egypt that are present till this day show evidence that there has been cancer in the bones back then as well. So it has been something that has been within our society for a while now.
Yeah, and I was also just with animals, like, I feel like we have a lot of research, on cancer already, and I'm just, like sometimes I wonder, like, where we got it from. I think a lot of it has just come from, like, doing tests on animals, like, I think that's how most, research is done, and although it's, like, sad, obviously, that, it's, like, being done on animals, I think it's contributed to a lot of, like, what we've learned. I think that's probably why we know, like, somewhat, that animals can have cancers, which I feel like is interesting. Yeah, I guess I just wanna look a lot of different things about, like, different, like, treatments. Like, one thing I found is just, like, in early in the 20th centuries, only, like, cancers that were small and localized enough to be completely removed by surgery were curable, which is something I just found, like, pretty shocking just because I feel like today so many different types of cancers are curable and there are cures to cancer. But, like, even in the 20th century, which wasn't even that long ago, like, if you can only kind of cure the cancer when it's small or localized, like not spreading, which I feel like is also just kind of not good, just considering how many fears existed at the time surrounding cancer and the fears that still exist today. And like after that, I just found like stuff about how radiation was used after surgery to like control smaller growths so that they wouldn't have to use surgery for every single type because they knew that surgery obviously was helpful, but they also knew that there needed to be like other treatments. And then I also found like around that time, chemotherapy was kind of discovered, and it was used to destroy like the small growths after they were controlled with radiation.
Um, that's pretty interesting that like there has been different treatments without the centuries that kind of like help fight cancer. And I think chemotherapy is something that we always seem to hear about while talking about cancer. What else? Do you have any other research specifically on like chemotherapy? Um,
Um, Not that much on like chemotherapy, I don't think, but just like I guess with chemotherapy, like and all different treatments I found, like a lot of them, like we needed clinical trials to test them. And I feel like clinical trials are more common today than they were in the past. And because of clinical trials, the approach to like treatment for patients has just become more scientific. Um, and like now clinical trials are on like a wider basis and we see them like I think with a lot of different cancers, if they're like unique cases, a lot of people can consider clinical trials and being a part of clinical trials for their treatment, where they can be like testing new different like treatments that aren't really introduced to the entire public as like yet. But I think that's cool. That's contributed to a lot of progress. And then not about chemotherapy, but something I found about radiation therapy was just how like people discovered it was being used as like a way to cure like different cancers. But then eventually it as it was used for like diagnosis and also therapy, like diagnosis through x-rays, as I was talking about before, but then also therapy to like control tumors, it was discovered that radiation could cause cancer as well, which I think must have been like really interesting. Like I've always heard that radiation through like different devices and technology. I think that's something that's a widely known thing that people will suspect that um it could cause cancers. And I think that's like interesting that they were using it widely for therapy before they realized. Um and I also like one thing I found with that was that radiologists like they used the skin of their own arms to test the strength of radiation. And as a result, like to until it produced like this pink reaction, but it looked like sunburn. Um and yeah, and then a lot of them as a result developed leukemia, which is like blood cancer, because they had exposed themselves to such high amounts of radiation, which I found like pretty interesting.
I also found it kind of interesting, like what exactly cancer was. After the fall of Rome, cancer was seen as an excess of bile, which we talked about. But then in the 17th century, this theory was discharged for like the idea that lymphs were being abnormal. And then it was later seen that cancer was a hard growing mass. So I guess like with the research that we've accumulated within the past century kind of like leads to these different theories, and then eventually some of these theories are like discharged for like theories that are more supported or backed up by recent research. So I think that's kind of interesting. We kind of see like the development of new research, thanks to like the development of new technology that we have. Yeah.
Yeah, and just relating to that, something that I found was just how like the research that we have today, obviously it's very advanced from like the original research we have like from centuries ago, but just like something that I found is just that like all the research that we have today, it's based off of research from like ancient times. So I feel like that's interesting just to think about. Like we obviously know so much about cancer just from our research like today and just in the past like recent centuries, but also a lot of our research centers around like ideas that we just that were discovered like in the past and like in ancient times, which I feel like is really cool to think about.
I think that's cool too. Like even though we've developed new research and new technology within these past decades, we still seem to like use the same research that we've had before. Like microscopes, they've been used, or like the idea of surgery, we still kind of like incorporate those into like the research that we have to this day.
Yeah. I guess just like anything else you want to add? Because I don't know, like,
Um,
okay. I guess we can just be like, um, okay. So I was okay. So yeah, I just think that's like really important to think about, especially today, just to think about like, because a lot of people, I don't think in their free time, a lot of people are like, I guess researching like the history of cancer, but I think it's definitely important to think about just the history of life in general. And because this is our podcast, which is about child cancer, the history of cancer, because it's cool to think about like the different treatments and also just like how treatments have advanced over time. I think that's important to know just for people that maybe in like specific cases where people are thinking about seeking different types of treatments and or maybe the idea of not seeking treatment at all, it's definitely important to realize how advanced treatment has become over time, how many trials there have been over time with treatment, and just how like much better treatment is today. So I feel like that's definitely important to consider. And yeah.
um Adding on to that idea that you just stated, like about how important realizing like how important it is to research on how people fought cancer back then. I think it's just generally like it's just pretty cool to see like how they how I guess in my opinion like how religion sort of played a role and all these different beliefs like there was a lot of treatments like as I said in ancient Egypt they they talked about um like a variety of potions and plant extracts and to see if they can to kill the cancer. So I guess that's pretty interesting to see.
Okay, so that just takes us to the end of our episode. So I guess if you're someone, are looking to support childhood cancer patients and help them to experience better childhood but are stuck on how, Cancer Kids First may be the answer for you. Cancer Kids First is a nonprofit organization started by high school Olivia Zhang that aims to improve the childhoods of cancer patients. Through volunteer work, donations, fundraising, and the creation of this podcast, those working with Cancer Kids First work to further this mission. If you're interested, go to www.cancerkidsfirst.org/get-involved to get involved.
Another way to support the mission of Cancer Kids First is to listen to his podcast and follow us on our Instagram and TikTok at the Go Room Podcast and Twitter at TGR_on-air. You can also get in touch with us through our email, thegoldenroompodcast@gmail.com. Episodes will be airing 2 times a month.
Now we'll be doing our shout outs. If you're interested in getting a shout out, make sure to follow us on our Instagram at the Go Room Podcast. And every other Sunday, we post trivia on our Instagram story. And you just have to play to the end to get a shout out. And we usually have a poll at the end that just says, "Did you play the end?" So if you want to get a shout out, make sure to click yes on that. And then I guess this week's shout outs are. These week's shout outs are Debbie Mo 21, Hilda Jean, Q Mary YM, T_Ready 6213, Emma Sherman 1, JS Holy 1, Alana is Awkward, Salma Hamad, Mackie.Strong, Ryan L. Hadri, Kira Siegel, Zoe_1001, Scarlett.LZ, Saifa Soa, Cure_22, Mara Dark, Ashley.Phillip, ProKid and Hater, K.P.28_, Serini, Zaman Lamisa, Kayla Vines_, Rewa Sethi, Shreya Vadareddy, K_Modder, _Ava Shap, Jason Stanley 24, Daniela Vilas _ and Kate.Burns. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Go to Win podcast.
If you have any ideas for or want to be involved with future episodes, make sure to check out the link in our Instagram bio.
Have a nice day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.